All right. Again, thank you for joining today's webinar by GreenGrowth CPAs. And today we're going to talk about how data can help you improve the profitability of your cannabis business. And I have some slides prepared and I want to explain a few things, probably between 25 and 30 minutes of that. And then after that presentation, I will answer any questions you have from the live viewers. And if you're watching this on a replay, please reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. So with that, let me go ahead. Let's get started. I'll pull these slides up and we'll go ahead and do this. So again, thank you for joining our webinar today, where we're going to talk about using data to improve your cannabis business profitability. And this presentation is brought to you by GreenGrowth CPAs. Now first, a little bit about GreenGrowth CPAs before we get started. Now, we are a cannabis-only tax and finance firm. And yes, we help with tax preparation and filings, but we also help with business financial audits, business valuations, compliance, outsourced CFO service, where we really help you get a grip around the numbers of your cannabis business, as well as IPO readiness. So if you're ready to hit the public markets, we can help you out with that as well. We have hundreds of active clients throughout the United States and internationally, and we service all verticals of the cannabis industry, from the cultivation, the manufacturing, the distribution, the processing, the retail, storefront, and retail delivery. Anything cannabis and finance or cannabis and cash, we can help you out with. And before we get started, I need to let you know that the information contained in this presentation is meant for guidance purposes only and not as professional legal or tax advice. And further, it does not give any personalized legal, tax, investment, or any business advice in general. So with that out of the way, let's review what we're going to cover in today's webinar. So first, we're going to talk about the importance of data for long-term success of your cannabis business. Then we'll talk about some benefits of using data to actually guide your cannabis business to success. Then we'll jump into some cannabis retail stats to track. We'll talk about some cannabis cultivation stats to track, and then some stats for all cannabis businesses to track. So first, let's better understand why data is critical to the long-term success of your cannabis business. Now, as you may see throughout some news stories, mega giant cannabis companies are experiencing issues, and it's all throughout the entire cannabis industry, whether it's the retailers, the cultivators, or anything in between. Now, having big scale and a lot of cash doesn't always mean big rewards and big profits. It could be a big fall from the top. Now, most people think that, hey, having a bigger war chest means a higher probability of winning. And in most cases, that's true. But it also opens up the opportunity for more wasted capital because people are acting on their emotions and not the data that the business is producing to help you actually guide that business. Now, the novelty of starting a cannabis business has really worn off, especially in those mature markets. And it wears off pretty quickly in the first few months after you open up a new market. Right? At the beginning of January, Illinois, it was a novel business to have a cannabis dispensary. Everybody was excited, but that novelty seems to wear off. The news cycle changes, and now you have to really build a thoughtful and powerful business. Now, don't bank on trends or fads or that something is new and novel will keep your business sustainable and protected and defensible. To be around for that long term and experience sustained profits, you need to be a data-driven cannabis business. Now, there are so many tools out there to actually help you capture the data that you're already producing within your business. For financial data, you can look at your POS system or your QuickBooks data. For product data, you can look at your POS system or your ERP system. For operations data, looking at simply just the time clocks or at your ERP system. Then you look at maybe marketing and customer data. You can pull all that from your CRM, right? It's never been cheaper to have so much intelligence around your cannabis business at your fingertips. Data is the new oil. You hear that all the time, right? This is where the real pay dirt is at. So capitalize on this opportunity sooner rather than later if you want to experience that big burst of profit as well as a sustained level of profit for your cannabis business. So now that you understand why data is critical to success, let's talk about some benefits of using data to actually guide your business to that success. And there are many, many benefits to having data guide your business. I'm just going to hit on a few here. So first, data gives you the ability to look at your business objectively. Now, as startup founders, it's easy to want to rely on your gut instinct because you're in the business daily, in the motions, in the movements, in the operations. You have a pulse for the business and what's going on. But that's the problem. You're too close to the business to make objective calls for the betterment of your organization. So don't let emotions drive your business because they ebb and flow and they go all around depending on the circumstances. And in most instances, you want to use data to help you guide your business. Again, don't let your personal lens cloud the way that you actually see your cannabis business and its performance. Don't delude yourself into thinking that you're successful when you look at the numbers, it's not really successful as a business. It may be the most money you've ever had at one time, but relative to your competition, you may be really low in sales or you may be really low in profitability. So again, use the data to look at your business objectively and make choices for the betterment of the organization. Next, the second benefit is that data gives you the ability to diagnose and optimize your business. So if you're not measuring something, you can't manage it or improve it. And when you're making changes in your business, whether it's operationally on how you actually handle client check-ins, or even implementing a new manufacturing process, you'll need to look at data about the business to see if your updates are actually improving or hurting the business productivity or the business profitability. And having historical data about your business performance will give you an incredible competitive advantage and gives you a better understanding of how your business is trending and how to optimize the business when you hit rough times or certain seasons of the business, which leads me to my next point to elaborate on this one. Data gives you the ability to spot trends, whether those are good trends or bad trends about your business. Now, numbers, they're everywhere, and half the time cannabis business operators don't know what to make of them, or any other business operators for that matter. Data and trends in your data help you to put a story behind your numbers and humanize these numbers, allow you to actually see what they're telling you. Looking at lines, which are actually the trends in your data, and not the dots, which are points in time, can help you anticipate the needs of your business and the needs of your customers. And it can also help you mitigate risk in your cannabis business. An example of a good trend to see is a sizable increase in your margins month over month with stable revenue. And an example of a bad trend to see that needs addressing could be that customer frequency is trending down, but average ticket is staying the same. Is this because of an increase in local competition, or maybe due to a change in the procedures for client handling that makes people not want to come back to your store? So again, looking at these trends allows you to see and spot opportunities as well as mitigate risk for the business. And lastly, data can help you increase the value of your cannabis business because if you're looking to exit at any time, any savvy investor or acquisition partner will want to see data to back up your claims of revenue or the trends in your revenue or your expenses or your marketing mix or any other piece of information that you state about your company. They're going to want to see data to back that up. Now, if you have no data available, then expect a massive discount on your business valuation compared to another cannabis business in your same vertical that has data. Whether that data is good or not, right? Whether they're trending up or trending down, data can really help an investor make a thoughtful estimation and valuation on your business and decide whether or not they want to acquire you or partner with you. And just some last notes to understand is that maybe you can't actually interpret the data that you have now. You should at least capture this data. Then analysts can come in later to help you optimize your business or understand what's happening inside your business. Because that's the beauty of data. You can capture it, store it, and look at it at a later time when you have time and resources to focus on it. And to build on that, one reason people don't actually interpret their data is because there is a ton of data to look at and it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And there are basics to keep your eyes on, right? Average ticket or average order size, customer frequency, weekly sales, and things like that. But in the rest of this presentation, we'd like to discuss some stats that most operators don't watch, but should keep an eye on. But again, it's up to you. Whatever you want to track, whatever's most important to you and the stakeholders in your business, track that. But be open to considering different stats to track based on your vertical and based on the stage of your business. So that brings us up to the cannabis retail stats to watch. I'm going to cover 3 of them here, but again, there are many different stats to check, but we're going to bring up some of them that we think you should consider tracking for your business. First is going to be customer acquisition cost, or CAC. Now, with cannabis businesses, you can't advertise on the major networks such as Facebook, Instagram, Google, but you can advertise on places like Weed Maps or organic Google SEO. And to compound that issue of not being able to advertise on the big channels that have a lot of stats and data, not being able to do that, attribution for broad marketing campaigns can be extremely hard, which means you can't really tie a customer to a specific campaign without asking that client where they came from or how they heard about you. But it's important to know how much it costs to acquire a new customer for any business, especially cannabis businesses, because it can help you to better understand how much product you need to sell to break even when you acquire that customer. One very, very crude way of finding a customer acquisition cost is to add up all of your marketing costs for a given period. Say it's the second quarter, and divide that by the new incremental customers that you gain during that second quarter. So say if you spend $5,000 on marketing or new customer acquisition, and you actually get 300 new customers during that period of time, your customer acquisition cost is $5,000 divided by 300, which is about $17 each. And if you're able to actually ask each customer where they heard about you, whether that's Weed Maps, Google, or wherever, then you can look into actual customer acquisition costs by channel. And this will help you to better understand where to focus your money to get the best ROI on marketing. For example, if you hear that 80% of your clients are hearing about you through a Google search, then maybe you want to start to triple down on Google SEO and not really look at those other paid advertising opportunities. But it's different for every business. You just have to ask and use the data that's available to you. Now, the second stat that cannabis dispensaries or cannabis delivery businesses should look at is customer lifetime value. Now, this builds on customer acquisition costs. And once you find out this information, the lifetime value, then you know what your customer acquisition costs can reasonably be to stay profitable. For example, if you can make over the lifetime of a client $500, then you can probably spend up to half of that, $250, to acquire a new customer and still stay profitable at a 50% gross margin. And typically, it costs less to keep an existing customer than to acquire a new one. So you should try to squeeze all the juice out of every orange instead of going to get a new batch of oranges every month. Try to get as much money and value out of your current clients instead of going to find new clients every month. Prioritize those current clients. Whether that's re-engaging them with a text message or an email, use your marketing dollars wisely to, again, squeeze all the juice out of those current customers before going to look to new ones. Now, to calculate customer lifetime value, you're going to need to actually calculate a few different things. And there's some liberty in looking into customer lifetime value. So I'll explain this at a 30,000 foot look, and you choose what's right for your business. So first, you're going to need to calculate your average ticket price and then multiply that by the average purchase frequency per customer. For example, if your average ticket price is $100 and your average purchase frequency per customer is 5, then your lifetime value of a customer is $500. Now, average ticket, it's easy to calculate. Total sales divided by the number of transactions over a period of time. But for frequency, you should consider looking at active customers or active clients. And you're going to need to define what that is, and it can be different for each dispensary. For example, you may want to include only clients that have come 2 or more times in the past 6 weeks, and then look at their average frequency. There's a little bit of nuance there. You decide what your thresholds are. But what this can do is help take out the noise from the clients who just stop by because they're on that side of town, or the deal finders who hit every first-time patient deal that they can get their hands on. You want to find a way to, again, take out that noise and get a good customer frequency. And with customer lifetime value, you can calculate this at an aggregate level. You can calculate it and slice it by gender, by age bracket, or even by channel acquisition if you have that data. It all depends, again, on the granularity of the data that you have to analyze. And these can give you deeper insights into the business and help you guide your marketing efforts. For example, you may find that female clients have a 48% higher customer lifetime value than male clients. Or you may find that clients who found you organically through Google have a 62% higher customer lifetime value compared to those who found you on Weed Maps, because Weed Maps clients are looking for deals and are willing to jump from shop to shop more often compared to the people that found you on Google. Those are just examples that may not be the case for your business, but slicing the data in different ways allows you to uncover these types of insights, because one channel will work better. One gender will have a higher customer lifetime value. One age bracket will have a higher customer lifetime value. You just need to find what that is. And lastly, a stat for cannabis retail businesses to pay attention to is the average margin per ticket. And you hear people looking at their average ticket, and that's a good indicator as to how much money someone will actually quote unquote spend in your business. But as operators of cannabis businesses, we want to know how much gross profit a client is generating for our business. That's more important because that's money that we can keep to help run the entire business. Now, average margin per ticket will require some other pieces of data to be input to your systems, such as cost to the dispensary for a specific item, and then the sale price for that item. And you're obviously going to have the sales price per item because that's how you're bringing up the clients, but that cost per each item is going to be very important to have for this type of analysis. And maybe after a month or two of transactions, you'll be able to see clearly with some statistical significance how much profit each visit brings to your business. And you may even want to, again, break this down by other parameters, such as male versus female, or even by age group. Because some clients may be spending more per visit, but they may be buying less profitable products consistently, which then makes them not as profitable customers. So it's good to understand who drives the revenue for your business, but it's more important to understand who's driving the profitability for your business. Now, some cannabis cultivation stats that we think you should consider watching. Again, this is not a full list, just a few to look at, consider, and think about adding to your data dashboard. The first one here is the average cost and average sale price per pound. Now, we've talked about this in many other videos and many other webinars, so we won't go too deep here on how to calculate that or any details of that nature, but it's critical to look at this stat in totality and get your full true cost per pound. And that can take a long time to figure out. You must complete one or even many cycles of your harvest to get solid cost numbers, and then have an accounting system that allows you to allocate expenses as granularly as possible. You want to be able to allocate nutrients per strain or per room, or at least indoor versus outdoor. How much labor is going for indoor versus outdoor? How much labor is going for each strain if you're doing all indoor? Because some strains or some rooms or some grow houses may be harder to work in than others, and this helps you get a better idea of that cost per pound for each specific strain and where it's grown at. But aside from knowing this specific stat, which could again be hard to actually calculate if you don't have the right systems, you may want to look at leading indicators of this statistic, which means that you'll want to look at the primary costs, which are labor and utilities, most specifically electricity. For example, if you want to target $600 per pound cost to produce, you'll need to budget out these expenses, which will then give you a guide to see if you're actually on the right track to hitting your target cost per pound. Yes, there will be some variability in these costs, but a plan or a budget can help you to understand if you're close to your target cost per pound or not. It's better to learn through the process, and actually when you're in the process, than after it's all over, said and done with. Now, you should do your best to calculate this cost per pound by strain and by location, such as indoor and outdoor. After enough time, you may want to even analyze this on a monthly basis and see what seasonal changes there are in your cost per pound. The next stat for cannabis cultivation businesses is yield per square foot, and this will be measured in grams per square foot. In many states, indoor grows are limited to a square footage amount, such as 20,000 or 10,000 square foot of canopy. So you really need to produce as much cannabis as possible for each bit of area you're given under your license. Now, this stat may require a fair amount of internal tracking of your products, but this information should be partly available in metric, and the rest you can track with in-house systems. For example, you're going to need to know where each plant came from, which room it came from, and keep them separated or tracked throughout the entire cut, trim, and cure stage of the growth cycle, so that your yields by strain or even by room can be assessed, and look at those if necessary, because you may be testing out some new nutrients or even new lights in different rooms, and you want to be able to track the impact of that on your yield per square foot. And knowing the statistic helps you know which plants help you produce the most revenue for your limited space. And you can take it a bit further and multiply your gram per square foot by its respective profitability per strain to see if that actually gives you the most profit per square foot, or should you change it up with a different strain. Next, what we're going to cover is stats for all cannabis businesses. And this next set of statistics are the ones that we watch and suggest for our CFO clients to help them better understand their cannabis business's health. First is going to be the quick ratio. And you may have heard this stat in an accounting class back in high school and college, so let's dive a little bit deeper. Being able to actually stay financially liquid is incredibly important when running and operating a cannabis business. But it's also important for every other business, but really for cannabis because it's so cash intense. Now, the quick ratio is an indicator of your cannabis company's short-term liquidity position and measures your company's ability to actually meet its short-term obligations with its most liquid assets. Basically, the quick ratio indicates your ability to pay your current liabilities without needing to sell your inventory or get additional financing. And the higher the ratio's result, the better a company's liquidity and financial health. It means that you have more liquid assets on hand than liabilities that are due. And the lower the ratio, the more likely a company will struggle in paying its debts. It's that simple. Now, with so much upfront investment in cannabis and constant monthly bills and just needing to keep up with whatever cash needs that the business has, you need to watch this number and make sure that you can keep the lights on for the next month or for the next quarter. Because running out of cash or liquid assets that you can quickly sell off to pay for your bills will stop your cannabis business right in its tracks. So you need to pay attention. Because also, cannabis businesses cannot file for bankruptcy. The only next option is receivership. So you don't want to get into an illiquid spot and then lose the entire business because you weren't managing your liabilities and your cash position. And this ties into the second stat that we track, which is weekly cash flow. So again, pairing with that quick ratio, every cannabis business should watch their weekly cash flow because cash is the oxygen of your cannabis business. No cash means no business. And weekly cash forecasts are used to project a cannabis company's liquidity over the medium term, estimating the timing and the amount of cash inflows and cash outflows of your cannabis business. And breaking down the business weekly helps you capture the more granular movements that can be overlooked if you're using a monthly cash flow, quarterly cash flow, or even an annual forecast for your cash flow. And a weekly cash flow forecast forces discipline through the cash is king mentality because cash is king in cannabis. It also helps you enhance your understanding of your customers and your suppliers. You're going to have to pay attention to the frequency of your customers' visit, the terms from your suppliers, and many other aspects of those two relationships. It also helps businesses understand the cost of growth. When you take on capital to grow your business, you have to really make sure that you're in a good position to be able to pay off either that debt service or build a valuable business because you're taking on equity investments. And lastly, a weekly cash flow forecast will help you to increase the communication between all of the other departments. You're going to need to understand where the money's going, who needs what every week, and that communication can help create better synergy within your business. The third stat that every cannabis business should track is inventory aging. Now, old inventory is simply not as valuable, or at least it's not as highly desirable as new, fresh inventory. So you're going to need to create an inventory aging report. And an inventory aging report is a list of the items on hand grouped by the length of time that they've been in inventory. It's used to identify slow-moving inventory, plus the additional costs to store and maintain these products until they're sold. Now, the inventory aging report provides cannabis businesses with insights such as, again, being able to identify slow-moving items, highlighting the non-moving items, understanding the length of time your products sit in the inventory, as well as quantifying the cost of maintaining inventory for long periods of time. Having access to this kind of information allows you to be able to make informed decisions when it comes to what and how many products to purchase for your cannabis business, especially for the retailers. Because in cannabis, very few retailers base their inventory repurchases on real data. Mostly, it's a gut feeling. Now, this is not a blanket statement for everybody, but the newer groups, yes, they're pretty much making things on a gut instinct or a gut feeling for two reasons. Either they don't have the time to track the data, or they don't have the data at all. One thing you see common is that customers will ask for something 3 or 4 times, then the buyer just goes and buys it because, hey, people are asking for it. But it's not always the best way to choose your inventory purchasing. So again, use your data to understand what needs to be purchased for your business so you don't sit on old inventory. And you may be asking, what is a good inventory age? It's different for all businesses and requires to understand what their tolerance is for this, but 30 days is a good inventory age. So if you get terms for your purchases such as net 30 or net 14, which means that you have 30 days to pay with no interest added on to that, make sure that you can get rid of your inventory as quickly as those payments become due. So if you have net 30 terms, make sure your inventory doesn't age over 30 days. Because if you don't stick with this suggestion, then as you start scaling up your business, it will be incredibly difficult because you'll always be low on cash to pay your bills. So again, make sure that your inventory age matches up with the terms of your purchases if you get terms on your purchases. That's not very, very common, but enough people have terms on their purchases from the distributor that we should bring that up here. Also, you may want to consider that if part of your inventory is hitting 30 days or 60 days old, offer a discount to move it faster. This can help you avoid fully dead inventory, and it can help you recoup your initial capital outlay on that inventory and not lose out on all of your money. And the last stat that all cannabis businesses should measure and keep an eye on is customer satisfaction or client satisfaction. Now, it's amazing to hear someone sing the praises of your business and how you're the best and how they love you. But the only way to level up is by getting that critical feedback from clients. And some of the best improvements are the ones that are non-obvious to the operators, but are in plain sight to the customers, whether that's from B2B or B2C. And you can use some robust, long survey, or you can just use a simple one-question survey to rate their experience today in your shop or with a transaction. And you can ask that on the exit from your facility if you're a retailer, or via text message if you're a manufacturer or distributor or a cultivator. Just understand that the less friction that you have for the user to take that survey, the more responses that you're going to get. And don't forget, you can change that single one question if you'd like. Maybe it could be based on the check-in process after you've made some improvements, or it could be on the quality of the product, or how the bud tender involvement was. It's totally up to you. But one thing is that you want to personally follow up with everyone who rated you below average, because sometimes people will have just a one-off bad experience, and that's good to know that it was just an isolated experience. But those follow-ups could help you unearth those improvement areas, especially if it's a consistent trend in responses that you're seeing. So make sure to follow up and get some more color and context to why people rated you low if they did. And lastly, try not to offer anything in return for a response. You don't want to sway people's behavior or the responses or the results of the survey because you'll be pressuring them or giving them kind of this, pressure to give you a positive response because they don't know what the reward may be. They may get a coupon if they rate you high. So don't offer anything in return for their response to your survey. So hopefully this webinar has helped you and brought you some value on understanding the importance of data, the benefits of data, and what statistics you should track for your cannabis business. Now, if you need help with data analysis for your cannabis business, then please reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. As we said earlier, we are the CFO for many cannabis businesses throughout the country, helping them get a grip on their numbers, analyzing their data, and help them build thoughtful assumptions about their business, which can then drive strategic decisions about the business to increase its value. Now, again, if you need help with data analysis or a CFO for your cannabis business, then please reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. Thank you for watching. I'm going to pull the slides down now and let's go ahead and get to some of your questions. All right, cool. So hopefully that presentation has brought you some value, helped you to understand a little bit about the cannabis industry. So I got to get a little bit of water, a lot of talking there. But yeah, let us know if you have any questions in the chat here, whether you're on YouTube or if you're on Webinar Jam, drop your questions in for the chat. It could be anything related to the data webinar or anything about cannabis businesses. This is my time to serve you guys, let you, pick our brains, see what we can help you out with. So again, if you're on Webinar Jam or YouTube, drop in your questions and we'll get those answered for you. I'll be here for probably another 10, 15 minutes. So take your time, ask the questions. We'd love to have, anything we can help you out with. Okay, we're at 12:30, looking good. Good. I'm glad we could keep that under at least 40 minutes. Sometimes it could just go. There's a lot to say. New ideas pop up. So glad to see that this here provided some quick value for you guys. Again, drop any questions in here. If I don't get anything in the next few minutes, we'll end up hopping off here. But hopefully this presentation has brought you that value that you were seeking. I know we do these every 2 weeks. It can be a lot to take in. And there's a lot going on in the industry overall with all the different changes going on, new licensing, changes in certain things, all these different things going on. So thank you for continually attending the webinar sessions and continually to, supporting and, helping to educate everybody else. We learn from the people watching our webinars, asking questions, learning what you're interested in, and then making content that serves that specific question for yourself. So again, drop any questions in there. If nothing, we'll hop off in about another minute or two here. All right, so I got a question here on YouTube. Does your company offer specialized marijuana GAAP SEC auditing service? Yes, 100%. We offer GAAP and IFRS auditing, so we can do it stateside as well as in Canada. So we can do that audits. We do audits for public companies, for mergers and acquisitions. So yes, please reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. Let them know that you're looking for some help with audits, and one of our team members will reach out to you right away. I'll drop that in here as well. Our website. Love for you to contact us. All right, cool. Anything else here? So we got Lee here on Webinar Jam. Do you assist clients in automating data analytics? Have there been useful applications using artificial intelligence and machine learning? Yes, we do help set up data rooms, data dashboards for our CFO clients. Now, automation and machine learning, there's certainly systems out there that can help with that, whether that's certain AWS systems or things of that nature. But most operations aren't going to need an intense amount of machine learning because they're not putting in enough data where a normal human can't look and draw insights from a basic chart. Now, if you're doing something that has hundreds of thousands or millions of data points, then maybe there is something with that. For example, if you have certain sensors on every one of your individual plants that's taking a piece of data or registering a piece of data every second, every 5 seconds, then maybe we can look at some relationships between the temperature in the room and the lights and then the growth in that plant. But, most businesses are not going to need machine learning on the small scale. But, reach out to us. You may have a very unique situation such that we can find a way to use machine learning or artificial intelligence to help you improve your cannabis-based business. Thank you for that question. It's a very good question. I haven't really thought about it too much specifically on our AI with cannabis, but that's a good question here. All right, Devontae asked, what programs do y'all offer in Atlanta? So for GreenGrowth CPAs, we can help you with pretty much anything cash and cannabis, whether that's for doing your tax filings, pro forma financial statements for early businesses that need to kind of project out and see what their business can actually do and what revenues they can expect when you go for fundraising, things of that nature. We can help you again with audits. We can help you with business valuations, pretty much anything. We aren't really stuck to a location. We can help people in any part of the USA for any kind of financial or CPA work, but across the entire world for any financial work if it doesn't need a specific certification in your geographic area. So hopefully that answers your question, but we can do pretty much anything cash and cannabis to help out. We've got onboarding programs for cannabis-based businesses such that, maybe you just started 4 or 5 months ago. You've got your build out done. You've turned the keys. Now you've got some clients coming in, but you haven't really set up the accounting systems because you were just rushing to get into the business, which is very much understandable. So what we can do is kind of onboard you, get your QuickBooks set up, get all of your data rooms set up so you have your important documents in a certain spot, help you with forecasts, things of that nature. And that's our outsourced CFO service. We can do just the onboarding, or we can do a monthly service as well, where we do reporting for you, all the stakeholders, your investors, again, help you with some of the statistics that we just talked about in this presentation, and make sure that people know and operators know what the financial health of their business is and what they can do to improve the health of their business. So Devontae, hopefully that helps you understand how we can help you guys out. If you have any questions, again, reach out to us via our website and we'll help you from there. All right, cool. Any more questions, drop them in. These are fantastic questions. I really like the AI machine learning part. I haven't really thought too much about that, but I think that there is something to it, especially when you get those high frequency data feeds coming through, whether that's through purchases. We're not at that point yet, but there might be some with that. I think in the later portions of the industry, as it matures, more opportunities reveal themselves. I've been in a few different emerging markets, and just watching things mature in their first 6 to 8 years, it really opens your eyes to see how rudimentary things start off and then how sophisticated things can get as the industry matures, right? Cannabis is a lot about enthusiasm right now around the product. Now you're starting to see very large tech companies, well, not very large, not like the SAP or, Google of that kind of thing, but larger $25 million investment size companies that say, all right, we're going to build a great ERP system specifically for cannabis. And they go into that stealth mode and they come out 6-8 months later with a beautiful product that gets the information right for clients. Because one thing to understand about data, right? We talk about all these different data points and all the repositories of where this data is at, and that you're already making this data. But the real hard part now in the early parts of this industry is bringing all these pieces together. Usually QuickBooks doesn't talk to your ERP system, which doesn't talk to your CRM system, which doesn't talk to your cultivation system, which also doesn't talk to metric maybe, right? So you have to find a way to bring all these pieces of data together. In most cases, it's going to be manual uploads, downloads, or brute forcing specific feeds into each other using JSON or any other APIs. But that's the things that we have experience with. And as new solutions become available, where there is very easy ways to make things talk to each other, we'll then help you implement and update those systems as well. So again, drop any other questions you have in here, and we'll look into helping you out with that. Yep, Lee says, yep, definitely some operational applications with manufacturing processes. I'm sure that there are some things that I don't even know are available for AI with people, especially those very high output and high throughput manufacturers for CBD. And we're talking cannabis, right? THC cannabis. You're going to see people that have, 2,000 pounds a month, 3,000 pounds a month. That's big business, right? But then you look at with hemp, we're talking about 200,000 pounds, 1 million pounds of raw biomass. There's going to be a lot of manufacturing goes on where, yes, when you bring up, Lee, those manufacturing processes, there is going to be AI that helps with, a multitude of things within that manufacturing process. And I'm very excited at some point to see how those things shake out, what the tools look like. We were at a few farms last year in October for the hemp harvesting, and just looking at, the tools, the very basic tools. There's a lot of stuff that was like adapted from corn or adapted from soy, or things that were brought internationally over, tools that were just like, wow, this is not made for hemp in any means. And then logging into certain social networks now, LinkedIn, and you start to see these amazing products that are cannabis or hemp specific. The industry is just going parabolic with cool ideas, new cool stuff. So AI surely is coming around at some point. All right, Angie asks, what are your thoughts of paying inventory by sell through instead of net terms? Okay, so I'm guessing what you mean here is like pay for the inventory as you get it, right? Not doing net terms. So what you're saying essentially is taking inventory on consignment. And that is, common practice. So a few things at work here. So as a brand, step back. As a distributor, you always want to take or make payments to brands on units actually collected, which means that distributors, they're going to usually front the dispensary some type of product, maybe 100 units. And then after the 100 units maybe sells, or maybe only a portion of them sells, then whatever sells, say it's 25 units, the distributor then pays the brand out on that units collected. Okay, most operators of these retail dispensaries are going to get terms because they hold the leverage. They have access to that first layer closest to the customer. Now, your question here is, can you pay off that inventory or that debt to the distributor as you sell the items? It depends on a few factors. First, are you paying cash to that distributor? Maybe they come once a week and you can pay them cash and it's easy transaction to do that. But if you want to pay transactions with cash and they have to come and pick that cash up, or you have to send somebody out to the distributor to do that, it can eat up a lot of time. So to me, it wasn't me always that suggested to do that. And I mean, if you're getting terms, you might as well hold on to that cash as long as you absolutely have to and not make the process as cumbersome as possible. That would be my hot take on that. You could pay as you get the sales, but set a frequency on that. It could be every 2 weeks and you have net 30 terms. That means you're paying twice. You're paying on the 14th and then the 28th or the 30th. That could be an opportunity there. But if someone's going to give you terms, I would try to stick to those basic terms. And just a little suggestion here for retailers, or actually for distributors, don't just extend terms to anybody and everybody. You want to work into getting terms and credit for somebody, which means you're probably going to have a newer retailer, take on 100 units of product. Say it's worth $1,000, right? Let them get that 1,000 units or that 100 units, $1,000 in product, sell it, but they're going to pay you up front for that. Let them do that 2 or 3 cycles where they're paying cash on delivery. And then if they want to scale up, maybe whatever they scale up to, maybe 125 units, you can offer them 100 units on cash on delivery and 25 units on credit. Slowly ease into terms because it's very easy to get burned. Don't let somebody scale up too quickly with terms, because when they get terms, it may be for the wrong reasons. It could be facilitating bad behavior because they're in a cash crunch. And you're never going to know exactly what someone's liquidity position is as a distributor for a retailer. But one way to mitigate the impact of bad debts is to not extend terms too quickly or grow their units too fast by extending those terms. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions or follow up on that, drop that in here and I can get to you on that here. Cool deal. Drop any last questions in on Webinar Jam or on the chat on YouTube, and we'll jump into those. These are great questions here. Good deal. All right, a little bit more and we'll hop into, let me see. All right, cool, good. I'm glad that was helpful for you, Angie. There's a lot of creative things here. Also about early parts of an industry. It's a lot about relationship based, right? People have to feel comfortable at working with you because there is, no D&B about cannabis businesses. There's certain things that you just have to trust people here. And it means you can get into very creative financing deals, whether that's on just for inventory or on the full business or on JV deals. There's so many opportunities to be creative because you are the pioneers of this industry. I mean, it's been around since, the legal industry since 96 with, medical in California. So it's not like it's brand spanking new, but in certain markets, it is brand spanking new. And you're going to really have to be creative in getting things to work for you, partnering with the city, partnering with people up and down your supply chain. It's a lot of creativity in that operations of your cannabis business, no matter what part of the industry you're in as well. So again, drop any last questions in here and we'll get those answered for you. Good deal. We also have our State of the Industry report coming out, or it'll be we do a monthly webinar stream here. It'll be at the end of the month. It'll be 14 days from the day. So today's 15. Taxes are due today. Don't forget that. But our next live stream will be on the 29th. That's where we're going to kind of go over all the news, all of the happenings for the past month, and whatever happened at the tail end of June, all the way through whatever happened up to that day. I try to get news stories and happenings all the way up to about 2 hours before that. One of the ones we talked about last week or last month was the change in LA licensing, where they're going to pretty much give every social equity applicant that completed the form fully is going to get a license. That's a lot of licenses. I think that's like 6 or 7, maybe even 800 new licenses in LA. But there's no way that LA market can support that kind of stuff. But that's what we talked about. That information came out, an hour before, the day before, even maybe for that live stream. So that's the kind of stuff you're going to get to learn, headwind on, and say, all right, this is what's going to happen. This is how our market's changing. This is how the overall industry nationally, internationally is changing. We talked about exports in Canada.
just giving some sightline to if and when the United States does legalize cannabis for everywhere, what can you do to prep yourself for an export market? How do you make those connections? How do you start to, tee yourself up for exporting? Because there's going to be great markets that are depending and demanding USA cannabis once it becomes internationally available. All right. Well, I don't see any last questions coming in here from Webinar Jam or YouTube. So again, thank you for taking the time to join our webinar series today. I've really, enjoyed our time together. Hopefully this presentation has brought you some value. If you have any other follow-up questions about the data webinar, about anything for cannabis accounting, cannabis finance, please reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.